Folks, it's America's 250th birthday. It's a great day to be American, and Donald Trump had a very serious warning about the threat of communism on this 250th birthday of our precious country. Welcome to the Sentinel Report. I am your host, Alex Newman. We have got a packed program for you today with some incredible guests, but before we get to our guests, we've got an incredible news segment. The warnings that Donald Trump just gave about communism, some of the strongest warnings we've ever heard from an American president. We've also got some major Supreme Court rulings and much more huge victories for actual socialists in New York. Unbelievable what's going on there. And we've got some very special guests joining us today, including our returning friend, Brent Knudsen. He is running 4RBs. This is an incredible company doing some incredible things to stop the collapse of the planet's bee population. And it's not just an issue for bees, folks. Bees pollinate our food, which means without bees, we don't have food. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. We also have the former president of Albania joining us and possible future president, also former prime minister of Albania, Salih Berisha, to discuss the Trump administration reversing course on the Biden foreign policy. He actually said as his country became a Soros republic under the Biden administration. They sanctioned him. They put in place a Soros buddy. Actually, Alex Soros calls him his brother, is now running that country. But it looks like we have some major changes in U.S. foreign policy. Our guests will break all that down. And we also have Melanie Kurdys to talk about a new bill in Congress that would get the feds out of education completely and put Trump's education agenda into federal law. So stay tuned for all of that. But first, a word from the Word. This comes out of Romans chapter 5, verses 2 through 5. The Word of God reads, "Through him we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope of the glory of God. Not only that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." Wonderful reminder, folks. Yes, we all go through trials. We all go through suffering as part of life in a fallen world, but God promises that this produces endurance and character and so much more. So let's always keep that in mind. Before we get into our news segment, I do want to tell you about our friends at Retirement Renegade, folks. I have looked all over the place for a financial advisor that I could trust. And when I found out that these guys were sounding the alarm about the great taking, not just sounding the alarm, but like making a documentary about it, and they wanted me to be in it, I was like, all right, these are some really, really good people. So you know about the great taking. If you're a regular viewer on this show, you don't even own your property in your securities anymore. They're planning to steal it all from you, and nobody wants to talk about it. In fact, one of the questions I get more than any other from our viewers, from our listeners, is what do we do? What do we do with our money? What do we do with our retirement? What do we do with our savings? Well, I would recommend that you check out Retirement Renegade, and I would recommend that you watch this incredible new documentary that they made. I am featured in it along with some incredible other people. And for our viewers, for our listeners, you can watch it absolutely free. Yes, you heard me right. When you use the promo code LIBERTY, you can watch this documentary for free. They put $1 million into making this. It features a lot of people that you will know well. So get over to retirementrenegade.com/liberty. That's retirementrenegade.com/liberty, and use the promo code liberty when you check out, and you're going to get to watch the documentary absolutely free. Of course, there is no obligation. We also have the great Andrew Muller joining us today, Chief of Operations at Liberty Sentinel Media. Andrew, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Pleasure.
Great to have you. So this is a very special week for our precious country, the 250th, the semi-quincentennial. It took me a while to learn how to say that. Semi-quincentennial celebration of our country's independence. The British said, hand over your guns. We shot them. And that was that, right? The shot heard around the world, 1775, Declaration of Independence, outlining our grievances, outlining the fact that our rights come from God. But our founding fathers did not invent these ideas. They actually studied history, and they studied their Bible. So we did a very special issue in the New American Magazine for this. It's called Celebrate the Declaration by every day by living it. That's the special issue. You can get copies at thenewamerican.com. We already sold out of the first print run, so you're going to have to give us a minute while we go get more. I gave a speech on Saturday, and I sold all 25 copies that I had with me. I have an article in there, and you can find it on our website, How Christian History Paved the Way for U.S. Independence. If you're a subscriber to our newsletter, you'll get it as well. But I want you to read this, folks. It's so critical that people understand that the Declaration of Independence was not some like new way of thinking. This was a long march of the Bible, the Word of God, the gospel, going around the world, culminating in the Declaration of Independence. The application of biblical principles, like the idea that God gave us rights, that government exists to serve us and protect those rights, that all came from the scriptures, and this issue makes it very clear. Andrew, what do you say? I mean, you have been a serious scholar of our nation's history. In fact, you and I are working on a book together right now about the Christian history that led up to the United States of America. What are your thoughts on this incredible milestone for America?
It's a huge, huge, huge celebration, Alex. Actually, it was John Adams, I believe, who said that the Declaration of Independence is signing the July 4th celebrations. They are going to be, for our nation, as important as Christmas is to Christians. It is the new life, the new birth of our nation. And they meant that in a religious sense because of this idea of appealing to heaven, that we as Americans appeal to heaven, not to the crown, not to the laws, not to the tyrants who are over us, but we appealed to God who gave us our rights. And we implored his favor, his protection in the creating of a new constitutional republic. And that's exactly what happened. So in this year, in this 250th birthday, we need to appeal to heaven again, to have that same religious fervor in protecting our freedoms. And with God's help, we'll be able to have another 250 years of American freedom.
Yeah, all these no kings protests this year. I was like, yeah, they probably don't realize that was one of the rallying cries of our founders. No king but King Jesus, folks. Acts chapter 17, they turned the world upside down because they said there was another king, King Jesus. And we need to remember that, folks. This is the history of our country. It has been deliberately obscured, deliberately denied to generations of our young people, and we have to rekindle an understanding of that. That's why Andrew and I are writing this book. You've got to know this stuff. It is essential. If our country is going to survive, if our country is going to thrive, we need the American people to know where we came from. We've got to know who we are as a people. As Sun Tzu said, if you don't know who you are, you don't know who the enemy is, you're done. You already lost. But if you do know who you are, you do know the enemy, you will win every battle. Speaking of which, speaking of enemies, the President of the United States just gave one of the most forceful warnings we've ever heard about the threat of communism. There was some humor mixed in, make it a little bit lighthearted, but I want you to hear President Trump warning about the communist threat.
Greatest communist in history would be so easy. You wouldn't have to work. You could stay home. The problem is a couple of years go by, the whole place collapses. Always does, always has. But I'm sorry to say, but assassinations of those who oppose them is a very important element of their ideology. Assassination's a big deal for them. They're animals. They're animals. In many cases, they're not smart, but in some cases, they are. It's easy for them to get followers because they make promises that they know they can't keep, and the Democrats aren't fighting back. That's why they're dumb.
Yeah, incredible. Now, they're also godless, and one of the top targets is Christianity. Listen to the president.
These are not social Democrats. These are hardcore, godless communists. They're godless communists. All communists are godless. They don't believe in God. This is the most serious threat to our country since its existence, in my opinion, 250 years ago. This is a major threat to our country. It isn't something that's easily solved, but with a little love and help, some hard work. Because it's ironic, we're celebrating a very important birthday, our most important birthday so far, 250 years. And instead of speaking about Christ, and instead of speaking about freedom and victories of all different kinds, we're speaking about yet another threat to the foundations of America. These ruthless communists will attack all religions, but in particular Christianity. They always do. They're after Christianity more than any other religion. It seems to be more and more throughout the world, maybe because we're doing so well.
Yeah, and there's a reason why they're after Christianity more than any others, because it is the truth. It is the way. Jesus Christ is the truth and the way, and that's why the commies and the jihadists and the pagans are always targeting Jesus Christ and his church. Remember that. Speaking of targeting Jesus Christ, the Democratic Socialists of America, major victories in the New York City elections last week. They're calling it a socialist sweep. The candidates backed by Islamo-Marxist Mayor Zoran Mamdani just won big time. I want you to listen to Osman Chowdhury, the co-chair of the New York City Democratic Socialists of America Electoral Working Group, warn Democrats here. Listen to this.
We control these areas. We won by massive margins. We have a democratic socialist mandate in New York City. Next slide, please. So In addition to the mayor, more than 3 million New Yorkers are now represented by socialists at multiple levels of government.
Okay, yeah, what could go wrong, right? And I always thought it would be so much cheaper to just go to Cuba and enjoy utopia there. I mean, North Korea, I hear, is pretty nice this time of year. Why do you got to mess up America, right? There's already plenty of socialist utopias. Speaking of which, Mamdani has a new plan. They're going to seize buildings from allegedly bad landlords and give them to quote-unquote nonprofit groups controlled by his radical comrades. They've got a new taxpayer-funded $53 million Office of Mass Engagement, which is going to be part of this, and the Office to Protect Tenants. They're going to be using complaints against landlords. They're going to be weaponizing them. They're going to be stripping people of their private property rights and redistributing it to all of these radical groups. They're also pushing now the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which they hope will allow them to scoop up all these properties and basically turn this into an engine for communist revolution. But at the same time, the federal government is fighting back. Trump actually said, we're watching these guys, the commies, we've got a plan. And the Department of Justice has just launched a grand jury probe, according to the news, into the Marxist billionaire Neville Roy Singham, who likes to hide out in China. He has been funding so many of these radical organizations with his billions in the United States. He seems to be very close to the Chinese Communist Party, and he absolutely hates America and, of course, Israel. Listen to this.
America is the most deeply racist society in the world, perhaps with the exception of Israel. The two most deeply racist countries in the world are Israel and the United States.
Okay, yeah, well, having lived all over the world, I can tell you America is probably the least racist place I have ever seen. Anybody who's traveled the world can tell you that. But that's what it is, folks. It's truly astounding. Andrew, what do you make of all these commies on the march across New York and beyond?
Well, it's extremely concerning, but the big problem is the youth, Alex. They have the youth on their side. They're weaponizing the affordability crisis and saying, hey, we'll give you stuff. Government's the answer. And I think Republicans and conservatives are going to have a meaningful, lasting solution to affordability, to the national debt, to all these issues by actually slashing government, actually cutting government, going after fraud. These things are going to have to be tackled so we can have true answers to the affordability crisis, because otherwise these youth are going to go socialist. It's not necessarily because all of the youth want socialism. Some of them do, but they just want a quick fix out to these crises they're facing. Like, I can't buy a house. I feel like I can't get married and have kids. So they're going with the guy who says, hey, we'll give you, a frozen rent. We'll give you free transportation, whatever. So we need to, as conservatives, as patriots, actually present a real solution to this affordability crisis. Otherwise, these socialists are going to come in and give it to them. But we know it's not going to work.
Yeah, of course, the real solution is end the scam of a monetary system masquerading as a Federal Reserve,
yes,
and stop stealing all of our money, right? Pretty simple. Stop having the government consume more than half of everything we produce, and presto, housing will be affordable, food will be affordable. It would just be absolutely wonderful. Now, there's a lot of MAGA influencers who are apparently wearing out their welcome at the White House. The White House apparently has a blacklist of prominent so-called MAGA influencers who are accused of taking money, sometimes even from foreign governments, to try to sway the MAGA base or to even try to sway the president himself. That's according to the British tabloid, the Daily Mail. I'm not going to name these guys. I actually know some of them. They seem like nice enough people, but hey, if they're taking money from foreign governments, whether it's China, whether it's Serbia, whether it's, whatever, we ought to know. Qatar, right? There's a lot of these governments, and we'll see where this goes, but we thought you should know to be on alert. We, of course, will never take money from foreign governments to promote anything that we don't agree with 100%, and we won't take money from foreign governments, period. Now, a few weeks ago, here in Florida, it became a big scandal that the Republican Party of Florida would not hold a debate. In light of that, we actually hosted a special little thing here on the Sentinel Report for our Florida viewers, where we interviewed 3 of the top 4 candidates for the gubernatorial race. Byron Donalds has not participated in any debates and doesn't plan to. And so Patrick Bet-David, who we had the opportunity to meet at Mar-a-Lago, is going to be hosting a debate between the 3 other candidates who are not Byron Donalds, because Byron won't participate. So we'll see. You can check it out on their website. Now, we've got 3 International Criminal Kangaroo Court judges filing a lawsuit against Trump. They're very mad that he has put sanctions on them for improperly trying to meddle in American affairs. So they're suing now, asking the federal courts to remove them from the sanctions list. As far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is a joke. This International Kangaroo Court ought to be shut down. It is a fraud. Now, big victories and losses at the Supreme Court for the presidency. The Supreme Court ruled last week that Trump could not fire Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Governing Board, at least for now. It was a 5-4 decision with Chief Justice John Roberts, and the Fed is different from other government agencies because it's uniquely structured, which is true. In fact, it is a private bank owned by its member banks, and I called them myself to confirm that. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court also ruled that law enforcement's use of these sprawling warrants to sweep up smartphone location data actually requires some privacy protections under the Fourth Amendment. Very interesting. We had a big case on immigration where the court ruled that Trump could, in fact, remove temporarily protected migrants from Syria, from Haiti, and other places. The word temporary apparently actually means temporary, no matter how much the open borders zealots would like it to be otherwise. Now, they also ruled that Mississippi can count late arriving mail-in ballots. Big defeat for President Trump. He was trying to stop the endless counting of mail-in votes. We also had a major ruling 9-0, where the court ruled that just by virtue of smoking marijuana or taking drugs, the federal government cannot deprive you of your constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms. Incredible, unanimous decision there, where the court said, no, you cannot do that. We've got huge fraud on the Obamacare subsidized health care. RFK and Dr. Oz are going after it. They've got over 1 million people with no Social Security number registered in the system, which probably means somebody's just milking the system. They don't even actually exist, or somebody was signed up against their will or not knowing about it so that some fraudster could steal a bunch of money. And folks, final warning, there are tens of millions of taxpayers who might be eligible for a huge tax refund, but you have to act on it before July 10th. There's a big court ruling here. It was called Kwong versus United States, where they ruled that because there was a federal emergency during COVID, they cannot charge you late fees and interest and penalties for not filing on time during that period. So if you're one of the people who paid late fees or interest or penalties on your taxes during that time frame, you will be eligible, it looks like, for a big refund. But again, you have to file before July 10th. I know I've already put in my filing. If you are one of those people, I would encourage you to do that as well. Stay with us. We're going to be back. We have 3 very special guests joining us on the program today. If you're hearing us in certain radio markets across the United States, you're not going to hear the interview with President Salih Berisha of Albania about how U.S. foreign policy went from being captured by George Soros to America first, especially in Albania. But you can find that at our website, libertysentinel.org. So get over there and stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break. Hey guys, Alex Newman here. I want to tell you about a wonderful ministry that is doing incredibly important work. That's Public School Exit. I am very blessed to serve as the volunteer executive director. We've got an incredible team, and our mission is simple. Try to get as many children into the safe sanctuary of Christian education as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. Government schools are no place for children. Children need to learn about God. They need to learn the Word of God. They need real education. They need to learn how to read, write, and do math. And we all know that's not what's happening in the government schools. In fact, what's happening is they're turning our children into revolutionaries, little radicals ready to burn down our churches and our civilization, not to mention our families. So go check it out today, publicschoolexit.com. We've got all kinds of resources for parents, for pastors, for taxpayers, for everybody down the line. And folks, this is one of the most critical battles. So go check out our partners at publicschoolexit.com, publicschoolexit.com. Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, a few months ago, we talked about what was happening to the bees. And unfortunately, the bad news just keeps coming in. It turns out American beekeepers lost more than half of their colonies over the last year. It's absolutely astounding, the data that we are getting. Honey production crashing across the United States. We've got record losses of bee colonies in the United States, according to government data. The USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service says that in 2025, the United States produced 116 million pounds of honey. That is down 14% from 2024. And for perspective, in 2023, the United States produced 139 million pounds. So we are down like 25 million pounds just in a matter of 2 years. Then we've got a national survey from Auburn University. They've got the Apiary Inspectors of America and Project APISM. They found that American beekeepers lost a shocking 55.6% of their managed colonies in just 1 year. from April 2024 to April 2025. It is literally the worst year on record since tracking began. Truly astounding what's happening here, folks. You've got large beekeeping businesses. They oversee, with more than 500 colonies, lost an average of 62% of their colonies between June 2024 and March of 2025. We've got millions of colonies vanishing. And folks, this is bad enough for the bees, but when you realize that we kind of need the bees to have food to eat, the urgency of this becomes even more apparent. So joining us to discuss all of this and much more is a returning guest, one of our partners here, Brent Knudsen. He is a visionary leader who saw the math in quantum physics and the frequencies that are shaping the future. And so he actually built one of Canada's largest payment processing companies. And then he sold it off to Goldman Sachs. And then he turned his focus to his true passion, which is exploring how geometry, quantum energy can help heal people and the planet. So today he's got a new company. He's the founder and CEO called 4RBs. And it's a mission-driven company. What they're trying to do is not just supply people with amazing honey, which it's amazing, I love it, but they're also trying to protect the pollinators that we need to have food, that we need, that nature needs to have balance. So they're bringing this quantum wellness technology to the world. It's just an amazing company. I've actually got some of their devices. We eat the honey. It's just amazing stuff. Brent, welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Thank you for joining us again.
Oh, Alex, it's a pleasure. And thank you for having us back, because it gives this opportunity to be able to bring some really good news with what you were just talking about. So you were coming with the problems, but the good news is we're about to talk with some of the solutions that's going on. So
and I'm excited about that. Yeah, thank you, Brent. It's wonderful to have you again. You were a big hit last time you were on the program. We got so much good feedback. Obviously, people are concerned about their food supply. But we were talking a little bit during the break, and you said some of the data that I just gave, it's actually even worse than that. That's terrifying. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening to the bees before we get into these solutions.
Okay, well then, so what the very thing you said, so since I've talked to you about, since we started the company, we now have beekeepers all over the world. We now support in Australia, Africa, Europe. So it's not just localized now because we're that far along. And just when you gave your stats, it's really between 60 to 65. Now, when we took the average last year, that was the average bee loss across all beekeepers. But in our hives, because we only have hundreds of beekeepers and thousands of hives that we've got to, our bee loss was down to 10%. So the comparison is we've taken that 70% in our control hives to 10 and 3 times the honey production. So that is all we have to do, letting your audience know, is get out into those millions of hives. The more hives we get out to, we will take that 70% and we will drop that down to 10. So that's what we're doing already, but we only control so many hives right now because of the mission. Because of wonderful people like your audience that are supporting us, we give all this to the beekeepers at no charge. The technology, the seeding, all of this, and the pollinators. And what it's doing is making a real effective change where we're able to get this technology in.
Yeah, and Brent, I want to get to the technology that you guys are doing to support these beekeepers and their hives. But before we even get there, everybody's wondering what's going on. And if you look this up on the internet, I mean, everybody acknowledges that this is a major problem. But in terms of what's causing it, there seems to be a lot of disagreement. There's this mite, I guess, that people are talking about that came in from Asia. You've got people blaming it on climate change, global warming. You've got people blaming it on all kinds of different things. My understanding is that you guys found a relationship between some of these frequencies that are just constantly being blasted out into the world now from all different sources. Talk to us about what you think is going on with these bees.
Yeah, well, the bees are the canary in the coal mine. Same as for us, because what it is, it's multiple things. It's not one thing. The varroa mite is one aspect that you were talking about. 5G frequencies is definitely playing a part into this. Pesticides and food sources, urbanization. So these are all things that combined are causing a problem with the bees. It's not just one thing. And what it's doing the same thing as it's doing to us as humans. It's reducing the bee's immune system. So when we say things like pesticides, or when we say things like 5G, it's weakening the bee's immune system, same as it's doing for us. We're connected. We're not disconnected from the bees. So what is it that we do exactly? All we do through the technology is build up the bee's immune system. In nature takes out the weak, Alex. Anything that's weak. So the varroa mites, the reason they're a problem is they take out weakened bees that are already sickly. So they take them out. Nature does that. That's what viruses do. That's what animals do, that they feed on the weak. That's how nature does it. So all we want to do is we want to build up the immune system, and that's what the pure wave cell does for bees and for us. But there's another thing that we do. What about the food sources and pollinating? You're like, right? So we also get out to the pollinator groups and we provide the money for special plants and food sources in the urbans so that bees are getting the food sources. So we're attacking this from every zone. But make no mistake, it's building up the immune system that is the key.
Yeah, that is so cool, Brent. Our regular viewers know that I recently moved out to our homestead, and one of the things we want to do is have a lot of bees here. So we're out there planting wildflowers and sunflowers. But you guys were kind enough to send me one of these. I want to talk some about these. This is the Pure Wave cell that you guys sell. And I want to encourage people to check out the honey. If you go to 4rbs.com and use Hive20, you get this amazing honey at I think it's 20% off. And the profits for that, a lot of them go right back into helping these beekeepers get this technology. But Brent, tell us a little bit about the Pure Wave cell. I've been sleeping with this under my pillow. I know you guys have a lot of uses for it. People put it under their pet beds. People put it in their refrigerators with their vegetables. People put it under their water. Talk to us about this technology. What does it do?
Yeah, so let's start with the facts. I sent the Pure Wave cell after developing it to a food lab in Quebec, Canada, called Pathogenia. And what we wanted to know that regular food that all your audience gets out of the grocery store, a lot of that food, such as lettuce and vegetables and fruit, it has different pathogens in it, like E. coli, Staphylococcus, Listeria, and stuff like that. So we sent it there and they inoculate it, and this is on our site, they can read the report, and they inoculated that these pathogens were in the food. They exposed it to the Pure Wave cell for 5 minutes, and it neutralized between 60 to 100%. In other words, it canceled out those frequencies before you even eat it. So it's amazing for cleaning food and your water. Those are facts because we have actually done the studies. We did the 3-year studies on what it's doing with the bees. So there's that we can read as well and talk about. But what else it does is just like with the bees, because Alex, we're no different. When we look as a one-celled organism, whether it's a bee, reptile, human, we're all the same. So we're all coming from that same environment. So geometrically, I don't know if you can see this, but this is what we look like in a cellular form, and then we form this geometry. So I followed that blueprint to build up the immune system. I'm explaining this very quickly because we only have so much time. But when you go on and start to study this, what it does is once you get the frequency right and then you use powerful magnets to distribute it, what happens is the cells respond. So that's what the bees are doing. They're responding to that. And that's why we're getting great results. But for us humans, it's the same thing. The Pure Wave cell doesn't fix anything. What it does is it stops the interferences that's coming in with us that doesn't allow the body to heal itself. The body knows how to heal itself. That's why when you cut yourself, it fixes you. It knows how to do this, but we interfere with it. We interfere with it by our food, by our environment, by what we're exposed to, by the way we live. And what we eat. So all of these things is where the Pure Wave cell comes in. So when you sleep with it and keep it close to your body, we have practitioners that use it for gut health, for clearing up gut health. It will also circulation. So it has multiple uses.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you guys recently had a peer-reviewed paper that validated this. They studied the beehives where this was being used and found a dramatic impact, exactly what you were talking about. While other beekeepers are losing 60-70% of their hives, the ones using your technology lost only 10%. Really interesting. So this peer-reviewed study was published through a scientific journal through Taylor and Francis, which is a globally recognized academic publisher. We're gonna have to go to break in a minute, and folks, we're gonna come back on the other side. For those of you who are watching us on Rumble or YouTube or our website, libertysentinel.org, we're gonna come back for a second segment. If you're hearing us on the radio, if you are listening to us live on the Sentinel Report. Get over to our website, get over to our Rumble, get over to our YouTube. You can hear the second part. But before we go to break, Brent, tell us real quick about this peer-reviewed study that looked at the technology and what it was doing for the bees.
Yeah, thanks. What we did is we took very large commercial beekeeper that had over 900 beehives. So it was large. And because they had entire yards of like 30 or 40 beehives in a yard, what we wanted to do is compare over a 3-year period what the hives did with the pure wave cell in it and what the hives did without it in the same area. So feeding on the same food sources. So everything was the same. And so what we did is we did that. We gathered all that data for 3 years, made the comparables, and then sent that. And then, as you had stated, then it got published because all the data, it was done by Dr. Meg DeHavis that did all the data gathering. And what we did then is sent that, and they confirmed the data and then made the resolution that there was a definite change between the hives that didn't have the pure wave cell and the hives that had it. And it was marvelous what happened to this beekeeper. It changed their whole way, because they're a commercial and that's their business. They weren't just a hobby beekeeper. So that's where it all came from. And they were kind enough to let us go through, because we had to do more than 1 year. We had to go through it to make sure it was doing what we said it's doing.
Yeah, this is so exciting, Brent. One of my siblings actually had beehives and lost them just in recent years, and finally just threw in the towel. But I think this may really be revolutionary. And folks, I mentioned before, but it's not just about the bees. I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't care about bees. Bees are essential to our food supply, right? They're the ones that pollinate our crops, our fruits, our vegetables. You need the bees if you like to eat. So this is exceptionally important. When we come back from the break, if you are watching us on Rumble, YouTube, or on our website, you'll be able to hear some of the testimonies of the beekeepers who've been using this. So stay tuned for that. Brent, before we go to this break, tell the folks real quick about what they can find at 4RBs. I know you guys sell amazing honey. It's now like a staple in our home. We use it on everything. It's way healthier than sugar. But talk to us about some of the things that people can find there.
Well, let's start with the honey, what you just mentioned. First of all, I'd like to tell everybody the honey that they'll be purchasing on the pure wave cell, it only comes from the hives that have the pure wave cell in it. That's number one. That we only source it from those hives. So they're super healthy bees, and that honey is amazing. Then we don't want to heat that up. So what we do is cream it. So you'll find it's not as liquidy. It's more cream, the honey, because we don't want to ruin those enzymes. So and the taste is out of this world because it's all wildflowers that we source from. And so that's the honey. The pure wave cell has multiple uses, as you'll explain and show in pictures, as to what it does for us. So many people have come to us and said, we're so interested in helping the bees. We're so passionate about it, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do about this. And what we say to them is, let us help. You help us, and we'll get the job done. Use us as the conduit. But when you purchase our products or you support that for yourself, it's a win-win. You get the honey, amazing for you. And when you do the pure wave cell, amazing for you. And then those proceeds go straight out to the beekeepers and you make a change out there. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it is. And folks, if you go to the website right now, 4rbs.com, if you use the promo code HIVE20, that's HIVE 20, you're going to get 20% off whatever you buy there. So check it out. I'm telling you, the honey is astounding. My wife's already like, hey, we need to order more, get more, so that we can put it on toast, on all kinds of delicious stuff. So stay with us, folks. We're going to be right back after this quick break with our sponsors.
In the grand tapestry of nature, a delicate balance weaves life's intricate threads. Today, this balance is faltering more and more as bee populations face unprecedented challenges. Without a collective effort to rescue our bees and enhance biodiversity, we're headed for devastation on a global scale. But amidst the chaos, a solution has emerged. A rallying cry echoes. A call to protect these guardians of our food chain. Introducing 4RBs, a technology-driven organization that is saving bees globally and organically every day. At 4RBs, we understand the critical role that bees play in maintaining the balance of our ecosystem. Saving the bees is synonymous with saving our planet. and 4RBs is at the forefront of this mission. Visit 4rbs.com to learn more about how you can save the bees and redefine the course of our future.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Folks, if you watch this program regularly, you know that education is one of my main passions because it is the issue that transcends all the other issues. If we allow our children to be dumbed down, indoctrinated, turned into little revolutionaries who hate America, we're going to lose our country. We're going to lose our freedoms. We're going to lose our churches. We're going to lose our families. This is a critical issue. And if you've been paying any attention at all since like 1979, you know the federal government has been one of the most significant catalysts for turning our so-called education system into the present-day dumpster fire that is harming our children so relentlessly. It's not to say that the federal government is the only reason, but the federal government took what was already a dumpster fire and poured jet fuel all over the mess to the point where now we got 40% of our children reporting persistent hopelessness, sadness, depression. 96% of the children in California reporting mental health challenges. 10% of the kids last year report to the CDC that they seriously tried to kill themselves. Less than 1 in 3 can read, write, do math, or any other core subject at even a proficient level. I believe the federal government helped bring all this about, but there's some very exciting and encouraging news. There's a bill right now in Congress, H.R. 2691, that would not only abolish the U.S. Department of Education, which the president, of course, has been very vocal on, but it would also end all federal education programs and transfer all of the funding and other issues over to the states. It would not just redistribute all the functions of the Department of Education, it would actually get rid of them at the federal level. Joining us now to discuss all this and more is one of the key individuals behind this legislation. Her name is Melanie Kurdys. Melanie is a friend. She's also a board member of U.S. Parents Involved in Education, where I feel very honored to serve on the advisory board. She's also the Parents Involved in Education chapter president over in Michigan. She's an accomplished business person, educator, researcher. She's the mother and grandmother of many, many little ones. She's got multiple degrees. She's had an incredible career, and now she is dedicating her time to try to improve the situation for our young people. Melanie, welcome to the Sentinel Report. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Alex. We really appreciate all you do in this fight for education.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to participate in some small way. So you guys have been working with lawmakers, in particular Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama, to get this legislation introduced. I have passed this on to my own congressman, who's been a guest here on this program. We hope that he will help carry this baton to the finish line. But talk to us about H.R. 2691. What does it do? Why do people need to know about it?
It's a very simple and direct bill. As you said, it not only closes the Department of Education, but it eliminates all the programs that fall within the department. So this doesn't include free reduced lunch or Head Start yet, but those are still on our agenda, but everything else from Title I, everything. And it ends the programs and then bulk transfers the money back to the states, and we're looking for the bill to redistribute it back in a held harmless way, that states will receive the same funding that they received in 2026 to help them in this transition. Of course, we hope over time they'll actually reduce the funding altogether and stop taking the money from the states in the first place. But we think that this is the way to make a huge move to returning control back to the states. We're really excited. It's in the House Education and Workforce Committee, which is chaired by Congressman Wahlberg in Michigan. I did meet with him, and he was not hopeful that it would pass all the way through this year, but we agreed that political momentum at this time matters. So if we can get both candidates who are running again, or incumbents, or new candidates to speak toward it, we could make progress in the next Congress to actually get it done. Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina is our champion on the committee itself. He's been great. His office has been great. And we're making calls into the other committee members across the country. The thing is, Alex, I think your people probably know, they're more likely to talk to you and take you seriously if you are a constituent or if you at least live in their state. So we're really looking for people to do as you did, to contact their congressman and speak in favor of H.R. 2691 to really give it some political momentum.
Yeah. And you know, I struggle with understanding this, Melanie. What could possibly be the argument for keeping control in Washington, D.C.? Like, I mean, just say hypothetically, I'm like a big government liberal. I think the federal government ought to do everything. I have Trump derangement syndrome. I think Orange Man Cheeto is like literally Hitler. Why would I want Orange Man Cheeto, literally Hitler, to be in charge of what's happening in the classroom that my children are in? That doesn't make any sense to me. So as you talk to these lawmakers, as you talk to people involved in the process, like, who's pushing back on this, and what are they saying? Like, no, we have to have the feds run all this. Like, how could you make that argument?
Well, but the argument is that something that's so important like education, which we agree on, you have to have the federal government involved. I mean, even the Republicans argue this. It was really strange during Ronald Reagan's presidency. He wanted to close the Department of Education, and his education secretary, Bill Bennett, talked him out of it. He said, if we control education, we can fix it. But that's fundamentally flawed. Anybody that's familiar with our founding fathers and the structure of our Constitution, education was explicitly left out, not because they forgot, but because they debated it and said, no, it belongs to the local community and the parents. And they were right, because education is such a personal issue. And to be successful, you have to be able to relate to the children. I honestly think the Democrats right now that are pushing back on it think that they have an iron grip on our government school system, which they do through the unions and the schools of education and all the installed base of teachers that are forced or coerced or philosophically believe in this leftist ideology of education. And so, of course, like you, we advocate that parents should get their kids out of government schools as fast as they can. I like your line, as if the building's on fire, because it's exactly true. But in the meantime, we need to do what we can to fix the government system. And the way to do it is to get the government out of the system and to return it to local communities and parents.
Amen. Folks, this would be a giant step in the right direction. And yes, I always tell people, folks, treat the building like it's on fire. If your children are inside, you know what to do. You run in, you grab them, and you run out. But what about the other children that are still trapped in a burning building? Like, what kind of people would we be if we just said, meh, let them burn, right? No, we got to wake the town. We got to sound the alarm. We got to do what we can to put that fire out. It is unconscionable, the horror that our children are facing at this moment in these so-called educational institutions. It's a disgrace. Melanie, we've only got a couple minutes left. Tell us a little bit about US PI, US Parents Involved in Education. It's a wonderful organization. I want people to check it out. But tell us a little bit about US PI. How did you get involved, and where do you guys go next from here?
Well, it's funny, after the fight against Common Core, a lot of us came together when the federal government really purchased their way into every state across the country, came together and looked at, well, that's the problem. So U.S. Parents Involved in Education was founded on the mission to shut down the federal Department of Education. And we actually wrote a blueprint back in 2016. And this bill, 2691, actually mirrors our proposal, which is great. When President Biden was elected, we shifted gears to how states could get out from under the federal government, which is still a good publication. But our latest report, Our Government Schools Redeemable, is really helpful because it gets back to the point you said. Well, are they redeemable? We don't think so. In the short term, for sure not. In the long term, it's going to be a huge push. But we try to provide constructive recommendations. So anybody who's interested in getting in the battle of trying to fix the schools, would be welcome into our organization, USPIE. And our website is uspie.org. And you can see all these reports and other position papers that we have posted. We're really policy oriented in trying to look at the big picture and inform as best we can and come up with constructive ideas to help people.
Yeah, Melanie, you guys are doing great work. I'm so grateful for everything that US PI is doing. As you know, I'm always at your disposal. I love serving on the advisory board there. If I can ever be of service, I will be. But I want to thank you for coming on the program. Thanks for pushing this incredibly significant effort. Folks, you can get in touch with your congressman today. Go on the internet, find their phone number, give them a call, tell them what you think. It's a lot easier than you might realize. Give them a call, tell them you want a meeting, give them a call, tell them this issue is important to you. Melanie Curtis, board member of US Parents Involved in Education. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. All right, folks, I'm telling you, this is really critical, guys. If we don't deal with what's happening in education, I'll just say it clearly, we're going to lose our country. we're going to lose our freedoms. Yeah, we're celebrating our country's 250th birthday. Praise God for that. But it is in spite of what's happening in the government school system that we have survived for so long. And I don't think we'll survive another 250 years if we keep allowing our children to be treated like this. We've got out of like 8 books that I've written, 3 of them have to do with education, folks. That's how much I care about this. My latest, Woke and Weaponized, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education and How We Can Take It Back. You can get a copy on our website, libertysentinel.org, in the shop. I wrote it with Robert Bortons, CEO of Classical Conversations, where my own children go. It's the biggest homeschool program in the world with 150,000 students. And there's a roadmap here for how we get not just the feds out, but how we get families out of this system. We've got to do it. My last book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, endorsed by Secretary of War Peter Hegseth and so many other great Americans, tells you the whole history of how we got into this mess and how we can get back. So you can get all those Crimes of the Educators. It's also in our shop. You can find them on Amazon as well. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back here on the Sentinel Report with more.
If you've been following Alex Newman's reporting on the Great Taking, you already know the laws governing your IRA and your 401k were quietly changed. What you may not know is what to do about it, specifically for your accounts. My name is Andrew Winnett. I'm a certified financial fiduciary and the founder of Retirement Renegade. I spent $1 million producing the Retirement Reset, the documentary Alex Newman appears in alongside Tucker Carlson, Ben Stein, Lauren Seidel-Baker from ITR Economics, and more. Right now, I'm offering Liberty Sentinel listeners 2 things completely free. First, stream the Retirement Reset. Go to retirementrenegade.com/liberty and use promo code LIBERTY at checkout. Watch the full film and see the evidence yourself. Second, once you have watched it, book a free 15-minute retirement income clarity session. I will show you specifically how your accounts are structured, where the vulnerabilities are, and what a protected retirement plan looks like for your situation. Free, no obligation. Go to retirementrenegade.com/liberty. That is retirementrenegade.com/liberty. Promo code LIBERTY. Do it today.
During the Biden administration, the George Soros influence on the State Department and American foreign policy was absolutely gargantuan. In fact, it was so bad that our next guest, last time we spoke with him, called his home country the George Soros Republic, partly as a result of the Biden administration's foreign policy. Well, we now have a new president who has changed course, and there's a lot going on in the Republic of Albania. Joining us today to discuss all of this and much more is the former president of Albania and the former prime minister of Albania, Sali Berisha. He's one of the top political figures in that country, which is currently in the midst of some very serious protests, partly as a result of a Trump administration project, or one of Trump's family members' projects. Former President Berisha, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
It's a great pleasure for me to talk with you. Thank you for interviewing me.
Of course, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you. So the last time we spoke, the Biden administration had placed you on a sanctions list. This was Secretary of State Blinken, apparently with a lot of influence from George Soros. The Trump administration has now officially removed you from that list, so you are no longer sanctioned by the U.S. government. But there's a lot going on. Talk a little bit about the shift in American foreign policy vis-a-vis Albania and the region. What are some of the changes that you have seen in Albania?
First, I'm very thankful to President Trump administration and to Secretary of State Rubio for removing me from the list of banning to enter the United States, which was absolutely baseless, with no any evidence, just a decision based on corrupted lobbying of Eddie Rama and George Soros. I myself, I have had deep controversies with George Soros for ideological reasons and political reasons. As a matter of fact, after President Biden came in power in our region, which is still with serious problems, George Soros became a very powerful factor in US foreign policy. I asked, how could this be? They told me that this is a back channel. As a matter of fact, he became a front channel. He became very important. So, for example, a project, an old project of 92, 93, which was sent via intermediary by Slobodan Milosevic in my office, projects which meant changing territories or partition of Kosovo, was presented many, many years later by OSF Belgrade as its own project. This project meant creating, exchanging territories between Serbia and Kosovo. As a matter of fact, in very truth, devalidating entirely the independence of Kosovo and working for pure ethnic line entities. So I opposed fiercely since the very beginning, because I saw that that's a threat to whole the region. Why? Three homogeneous communes like in north of Kosovo, they are everywhere. They are in South Albania. They are in Western Montenegro. They are in Western Macedonia. They are everywhere. Such a minority communes. And if we open the Pandora box, we are going to a new chain of conflicts with imprevisible consequences. But at the other hand, which I hated, because this was somehow going to pure ethnic lines, communities, and states. I didn't like that. I think that we have to accept each other and live as citizens equal to the law. This was why I fiercely opposed. Because this project was presented as a consensual project by the leader of Belgrade, Tirana, and Pristina. But after it's shown that was not at all consensual, the project as consensual was accepted by John Bolton, was very much promoted in Brussels by Mogherini and other leaders. So fortunately, it was not accepted by President Trump. And the day that John Bolton stood and told, I accepted it because I support it because no one is opposing. President, someone else from National Security Council went in media and told media that President Trump do not support the project, which was very important. After failing with this project, Soros took another initiative, the Open Balkan. The Open Balkan was founded in Novi Sad as mini Schengen, Balkanic mini Schengen of Balkans. But once European Union opposed to the name mini Schengen, they took to name it a title of an article written by George Soros in '91 about the Open Balkan. The Open Balkan was a project, curiously to know, that was fully supported by both Alex Soros and Sergei Lavrov. Open Balkan brought back Serbian political and economical hegemony in the region, which was proved to be a very destabilizing factor for Balkans, was a failed experiment. I fiercely opposed to it. Open Balkans, splitted Balkans in two parts, an alliance between Serbia, Northern Macedonia, and Albania, which a trilateral alliance, whereas other nations in Balkans didn't join it. It brought somehow the Cold War area. Sergei Lavrov stood openly supporting it, saying that when he was blocked to come to Serbia by NATO member countries, blocked their space, Lavrov stood and told that one of the reasons that I was going there to show support to open Balkan, which is such great idea. As a matter of fact, was an idea for Serbian hegemonism. And we protested against it. They got furious. Some US diplomats which supported it were furious against our protests and against our stand. But I think we did the right decision. This was about George Soros' foreign policy, which, in my view, was not identical to United States foreign policy in the region.
Yeah, it's amazing how much influence George Soros had during the previous administration on foreign policy. We saw it in Latin America. We saw it in Europe. Of course, we saw it in the Balkans and Southern Europe. Absolutely astounding. And I've been through all those countries. I had a nice trip through Albania and Montenegro and Serbia. And yeah, anything that George Soros touches always becomes a mess. We are almost out of time, Mr. Berisha, but I do want to ask you, there's obviously some big upheavals going on in Albania right now. It started with a project of Jared Kushner to develop a kind of a resort on one of the islands off the coast of Albania. And now there are protests against the government. There are protests about environmental concerns. They're calling it the Flamingo Revolution, because I guess it's about protecting, or at least it started off about protecting some endangered flamingos on this island. What does this signify for Albanian politics, for American foreign policy, and for the broader region?
In very truth, what is happening, the root cause of what is happening is a total lack of transparency of Edi Rama.
Edi Rama, the current president of Albania.
Total lack of transparency. It was Rama which offered the region, but he offered the region in a way like being let us say, a sultan of centuries ago sultanate. That is not, in my view, showing to the investors the laws that should be followed, the laws about the property, about the environment, the Albanian and international laws which Albania is obliged to respect. Rama, instead of following laws and working in a transparent way, he worked in the most non-transparent way. He tried later to amend his stand non-transparent, but no one trusted him more. To give you an idea about how do Edi Rama work in these matters. 2 weeks ago, a bomb was exploded. What it was? It was a book, the red book, called Albania's File. Albania's File, in which include 523 projects, huge projects in overall Albania, drafted by 60 architectural studios, and without absolutely any preliminary, let us say, study of environment, study of no any study, just like working in his own personal garden. So it came that in this book there are so many projects foreseen in protected area 3 years ago, but Rama changed later the law because of these projects and dropped these areas from protected one. That is a pure state capture in this case. There are so many other questions raised, but this is his way of working, personalizing entirely the matters, and I'm sure that the root cause of the protest is the lack of transparency of Prime Minister in this matter.
Yeah. And folks, if you're not familiar with Albanian politics, Edi Rama is very, very close to the Soros dynasty. In fact, Alex Soros called him his brother. So that gives you a little sense of what we're dealing with here. And a lot of this brought about with help from the Biden administration. Sali Berisha, former president, former prime minister of Albania, also the chairman of one of the big political parties in Albania. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll keep us updated on what's happening in Albania. And thank you once again for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It was a great honor, pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that is all we have time for today on the Sentinel Report, but I want to thank you for tuning in. Stay with us. We'll be back again next week with much more. And until then, God bless you all.